Hello, everyone. Welcome to MarketBeat Mondays. We are so excited to have you with us talking about all of the market moving stocks that could happen this week and going over some of the big market moves from last week, too. We have a lot to cover today, and our favorite analysts are here with us, MarketBeat analysts Thomas Hughes and Chris Markoch joining us again today. Guys, we've been talking about a September slowdown for a while and the potential of the market kind of slowing down a lot this month and into October. But so far, especially today, we're not seeing too much of that.
No, the S&P 500 is still in an uptrend. Today's market was kind of tepid, but it did move a little bit higher. Last week was an up week. Over the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've seen the market moving sideways at record highs. So to me, it looks like we're just kind of waiting for the next push to push it higher. Maybe we get a little pullback before then, but I think that the uptrend's intact, and we're looking for new highs to happen pretty soon.
Yeah, I think that is the question is there. Everybody's in a wait and see mode right now because there's a lot of data coming out this week, and that just came out last week. Chris, walk us through a little bit of what all is coming up this week.
Right. So this week we've got the latest readings on inflation with the CPI and the PPI. And one thing that investors who have followed this data in the past should note is this is kind of an odd month because they flip-flop this month.
Right.
You're going to get the PPI coming out first on Wednesday, and then the CPI will follow on Thursday. And right now, these are the last two data points on inflation that the Fed's going to have before they have their meeting next week. Right now, investors are not expecting to see a huge spike in inflation. I'm hearing numbers like a CPI around 2.5. But if you were to see a number that was significantly higher than that, that could dampen expectations for the rate cut. But right now, people are figuring we're going to get numbers that are going to be in line with expectations, and that should be enough for the Fed to cut interest rates as expected next week.
Yeah, it's going to be a big week ahead. For those of you who are just joining us, maybe for your first MarketBeat Monday, I wanted to break down what this live stream is all about. We have a few prepared things that we're going to talk about, but we also take all of your comments from the chat. Any questions you have, some stocks that you want us to cover, our analysts will look at them on the fly and give kind of a cold read about what's going on. I see a lot of different stock tickers coming in the chat already. Thank you to those who've added some names. We've already added them for the list of things to talk about. So if you're just joining us again for the first time, welcome to MarketBeat Mondays. Here's what you can expect. We're going to get back to some of the points we wanted to cover before we dive into the new names that you're listing in the chat right now. And that is whether or not we should wait to really make some major market moves. Do we expect the market to kind of be in this wait and see mode until some of those numbers come out this week, Thomas?
This is a tricky market because it does look pretty bullish. To me, the fundamentals are fairly bullish. There is plenty of risks, but right now there's not any proof in the pudding for where those risks are going to materialize. So being out of the market is a risk. Maybe you don't want to be all in right now, but certainly you want to be in the market. And then depending on what happens over the next week, if we get a pullback, I would be a buyer. Right now, the outlook for earnings is still positive. Until that changes, the market really will be moving higher, and until that changes, that's pretty central to my investing strategy and philosophy. So.
Yeah, well, that answers one of the questions we had in the chat today about whether to wait for the numbers or not. So good answer to that one. Let's get into a couple of the stocks that we saw that were up this today and just last week that we want to cover before we get into some of the names. And this might answer some of the questions coming in the chat too. Let's talk about Broadcom, because this was one of the biggest jumps on a giant company that I've seen in a while. Pulling up the chart right now, it had such a big week, 14% in 5 days. What's behind this big boost that we saw?
Well, it reported earnings last week, and it affirmed this pretty robust outlook for AI growth, AI-driven growth. Its place with this outlook for custom AI accelerators. So not just for run-of-the-mill, let's build giant data center accelerators, but custom accelerators for specific needs. Also got a new customer, which is really important for Broadcom because a lot of their income comes from only a few customers. So getting a new customer not only affirms the outlook, but it improves their revenue stream. They raised guidance. So all really good news for the stock. And what happened is the market moved to a new all-time high. Today, the first moves of this week is confirming, support above this new all-time high level. And so right now it's looking pretty bullish.
Yeah, a really bullish story for Broadcom. Do we expect this one to continue to see this massive uptrend? This is one we've talked about plenty of times on the channel. It's also a company we've seen a lot of congressional action on. We've talked about this in several videos
Right.
over the past 6 months to a year. This is a popular stock. Do you think it's a time to be getting in now when we're seeing so much more attention to it, or is this one to just continue to watch?
It looks to me like this could be like a game-changing move for this market. Where Broadcom has been itself very strong for a very long time, but now it's emerging, kind of like Oracle has emerged as this new, really central to AI and AI infrastructure tech play, and I think that could carry it forward for some time.
All right, sounds good. Well, let's cover a couple of the other stocks that are seeing some major moves today. Chris, you've got these two. We want to talk about Robinhood. That's
Right.
one of them that we saw a lot of movement in the stock today. What's
Right.
behind that?
So Robinhood got. It was announced that Robinhood would be trading as part of the S&P 500 as of September 22nd, and the stock is up, I think, about 14% today. On that news, very, very strong. Actually, it's up 15.5% right now. So strong move in Robinhood. The chart looks really good. It bounced off of a level of support, and it's surging higher. The interesting thing about this move is that you've taken a company that was sort of known as a disruptor in the fintech space, and now it's becoming very mainstream. And it's going to be very interesting because as of September 22nd, now the institutions have to start buying the stock. So is there going to be upside to the stock? I would imagine so in the short term. I think there's some investors that would probably like to see it come back and pull back a little bit. So they might get a little bit of a better entry price. But I think as we've seen with some other stocks over the past year, that S&P 500 inclusion is a big deal.
Yeah, I think.
I'm sorry, Bridget. Looking at the chart, today's move was pretty strong with high volume.
Right.
The indicators are set up for this really significant shift in momentum that looks like, based on the last 6 or 8 months of price action, if we break to a new high now, this market could continue to rise for the next few months and gain like $60 to $80.
That's a big move for this one. It's a little different than what analysts are saying. I had the analyst forecast up a little bit ago, and I think right now it said about a 14% downside. Their consensus price target is around 100 for this one. Thoughts on that?
I think you have to be a little concerned there, Bridget, because a lot of those analyst ratings don't necessarily factor in the S&P inclusion.
Right.
So I think the S&P 500 inclusions, it is a one-off, but it gives that stock momentum, like Thomas was saying, and you're leaning into what looks like it's going to be a bullish rally towards the end of the year, and that's where you could definitely see the stock get that momentum.
Yeah, I'm curious in the chat right now, those of you watching, if you use Robinhood, if this is a platform that you're on every day, let us know in the chat right now. I feel like this is a stock that a lot of retail investors root for simply because they're used to using it every day. So I think that's an interesting question. Let me know in the chat if that's the platform that you're using when you're in the market every day. Go ahead.
No, just talking about the analyst trends, you're saying that consensus is 15% downside, but the trend in their revisions is very bullish. Robinhood is one of the most upgraded stocks on the platform. Recent activity includes numerous boosted price targets, all leading to the 120, 130 range. So that's looking at another $15, 10, 12% upside from where we are right now. Right. And the way the revisions are going, we have increased coverage as well. So we have really broadening support, broadening coverage, a rising trend in the price action, S&P 500 inclusion, driving a strong technical picture. Right. I really see no reason why this stock would not continue to move higher in the near to short term.
All right, we've got a lot of stocks coming in the chat, so let's go through a few of the others we want to talk about before we get to those. The next one is AppLovin. Let's talk about, Chris, why is this one seeing a jump right now?
Same story as Robinhood. They're going to be included in the S&P 500. And again, you see the stock make a very sharp move. It's up about 11.5% today. So the company, they're doing the infrastructure that you need for a lot of the mobile apps and stuff like that. And again, I think it's a fairly strong chart. I apologize, Bridget. I'm having a difficult time getting to the chart right now, but stock made a very strong move after the inclusion was announced, and that's carrying through into today. Again, this looks like a very, very good chart. And for all of the reasons that Thomas just said with Robinhood, you would expect to see AppLovin move higher in the near term.
Yeah, that inclusion in the S&P 500 is big news for these small cap companies and could mean a lot of momentum for these stocks. Last question on this one, Chris, and then we'll move on to some more. And that's just how
Sure.
long does it take to see the true effects of getting in on the S&P 500? Does that instantly go up? Do we see a lot of sharp spike initially with the announcement, or do we see more continued growth? What have we seen in past stories like this?
Using Palantir as a fairly recent example, I think you're going to see a sharp spike up like you see now. And then the question is going to be, what are you going to see, over the next couple of months? Because now is when institutions have to start buying into the stock. They have to start weighting it accordingly with the S&P 500. So I think this is a story that's going to definitely have legs to the end of the year, as far as how much of a catalyst they can get from that individual event.
All right, very good. Well, now I'm moving on to some of your suggestions from the chat. Thanks again for everybody who's putting the stocks you want to hear about. I might not be able to get to every single one, but we're going to cover a lot of them and give us some time to let these guys take a look at the charts and give a brief analysis of what's going on too. Let's start with BBAI. This is one we've talked about plenty of different times on this channel. It had such a good bull run earlier in this year, and now it's not even moving sideways. It's really moving down quite a bit right now. The question is from Financial IQ, when is BBAI going to make a move to the upside? Good question. What are your thoughts, guys?
It's possible that it could make a move to the upside soon, just because of where it's pulled back to these support levels. But what I will say to that is the upside is limited, and I would expect it to be capped, and for the stock to remain under pressure because results haven't been that good. The outlook is still really awesome, but there's really nothing to back that outlook up because the results have been pretty poor. No new deals have been announced. The most recent news I saw was them filing for a mixed shelf offering, which to me just means dilution. So right now, what I'm kind of looking at is this support level in the 380 to 450 region as a pretty critical level that will be tested and possibly broken very soon. If it gets broken, this market could fall down to the $2 range, maybe lower, and we'll have a very hard time moving higher from there. So without some bullish news, I think that this stock is one that you might want to walk away from.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And Aaron Hill saying BBAI had terrible earnings. We know that's why this stock went down so much.
Right.
I'm curious why there's still so much expectation for this company. It's I don't know if it's exactly a similar story as CoreWeave, but we have so much expectation on companies like CoreWeave. BBAI had so much expectation with it. Will it just take a while for that expectation to come true? Do you think there's an expectation for a reason, or were these just overhyped?
Well, I think BBAI is like a lookalike stock for Palantir, right? For being the AI, government AI, automation, and data processing and all those kind of things. And it just isn't having the same business. Palantir's already doing it, already taking government contracts, taking market share in the private sector, and BBAI is just kind of struggling. And unlike where NVIDIA and AMD both have enough market room to grow and sell their GPUs and have ridiculous amounts of growth, right now it doesn't look like there's the same thing in the markets where Palantir and BBAI are trying to operate.
Yeah, Chris, do you have any thoughts on BBAI compared to Palantir? Is there any competition there?
Oh, I think I think investors need to be careful that they're not, you're comparing apples with apples. And I think that there's a growing sentiment among analysts that with the defense budget going up, that the pie is going to get bigger, and that therefore there's room for other people other than Palantir, which is true. And BBI may be one of those companies that gets a piece of that pie. But I think we're talking about a thinner slice of the pie as opposed to Palantir, which has a much larger market share. And to Thomas's point, Palantir's already embedded. It's already doing the things that the government needs it to do. And once Palantir's in, there is a cost to shift. And I think that BBI is facing that. Again, I'm not saying the stock can't move up. I think the catalyst for them, if there's going to be one, will be when they report earnings, which is going to be coming up in November. And I think they're going to have to deliver a much better print than they did and show that there's deals there and there's real substance there beyond just the idea that, well, we might be I don't even want to say the next Palantir, because I've heard from a lot of BBI investors who don't even necessarily believe it's going to be the next Palantir in terms of the growth, but certainly it's going to launch off this idea of we're a penny stock now and we're going to be this great stock somewhere down the road.
That's a good coverage of BBAI. I know it's a popular stock, so I wanted to give it some time and actually talk about it a little bit more. We'll move on to another one that's come up a couple of times in the chat today, and that's SoundHound. I've got a different view on a chart here today, but we talk about this company a lot as a lot of potential. It seems to be doing pretty well right now. Thomas, you've talked about SoundHound before too. What are your thoughts on and how much upside this stock could still have coming?
All right. I would need to double check and see if any new news came out, but looking at the chart, it looks like the market is gaining traction, like what I've been talking about the last few times that we've talked about it. Just that, in the last year had that huge spike. First part of this year, the market corrected, but it's bottomed. Since then, the news cycle has continued to be good, affirming this outlook for growth. And so since then, the market has been just building a more solid base of support. The indicators are looking pretty bullish in support of this rising trend. It looks like right now we may be facing some resistance at the like 1635 level, but I would imagine that it will get broken unless some bad news comes out or the next earnings report is kind of weak. Let me look and see when the next report is due. Let's see, 11/13. So it's going to be about 2 months for the next report. So it's, possible the market could be capped until then, but I think the analyst trends since the last report have been pretty positive. They're leading to the high-end range, which puts the stock in about the $18 region. Let's see here. Short interest is pretty high, so that's going to be a factor. Another reason to think that maybe the market will be capped around 1650 until the next earnings report happens, but there's also this chance that with or without the report, the market could drift higher enough that the shorts start covering. And that's the kind of thing that once they start covering, that little trickle could become a flood. And next thing you know, the stock is back at the 2250 and we're retesting all-time highs again.
Yeah, that's a really strong chart, Thomas. When you look at SoundHound's chart, that's a really strong chart.
And it's something we've been talking about, again, for months, almost over a year now, of the potential for this company. Right. So it's nice to see that finally coming to fruition. I can't get over it, and maybe I'm just too new to investing here, but when I see the dips that we saw in SoundHound, it really leveled out for so long. Any concerns about why that happened and why we're finally starting to see this resurgence in SoundHound? Is there any chance that we could get back to that dip that we saw earlier this year?
Well, so the big spike in the pullback in 2024 and the first part of this year was an explosion of outlook. All of a sudden, the outlook for this company, this startup, was really huge, and the market just really bought into it, and there was nothing to cap the gains. But since then, a little bit of reality, which was It's still a pre-revenue company, but now it's not. Now it's making money. The market's pulled back, but obviously has shown support at levels aligning with those previous, pre-breakout levels. And since then, building even more support just because the news cycle has continued to be positive with, revenue growth and profitability on the table and expanding into new verticals, deepening penetration of clients, really just providing a strong tailwind for the outlook and expectation, for revenue growth and for future earnings and profitability.
All right, very good. Well, that's enough coverage on SoundHound. Another name that's come up a few different times is a company we've talked about on here before, ASTS. Let's talk about this one. I'm not sure. I'll give you both some time to pull up the chart too. I haven't looked at it yet either. But I'm a fan of the concept of this stock for sure. We've talked about it on the channel enough times. The questions are, what's going on with the stock chart right now? And then what do we expect to see for when this could actually take off?
Well, right. So I think this stock chart, it really is kind of similar to what we just talked about with SoundHound. Earlier this year, the market starts to rocket higher because the outlook for revenue and for profitability has really blossomed. Since then, because that initial move was so large, so from June to July, we moved from 22 over 100% in like a month. That's huge.
Right.
So this is just like the market naturally pulling back, giving up some of those gains of profit takers. But today's move, I think, is especially telling. So today, this morning on Monday, the market gapped lower, opened at a new low, and it only rose since then. So this move created a very strong green candle that's aligning with support at previous record highs in the near 3850, right? So this looks like if you were waiting for this chart to give you a signal to buy on this dip, it looks like it gave it today. People that might want to try to buy in a little bit lower than where it is now might want to wait and see if the market will retest the 3850 level, but it looks like that's going to be a pretty strong level, and that'll be the launch pad for the next big rally.
Chris, do you agree with the long-term outlook for ASTS? Do you think that there's going to be a rally? Do you think it could go even lower yet?
I tend to agree with Thomas about, today's action is very encouraging in terms of have we found the bottom. I think I think it's important to remember why the stock has dipped so much in the last month, and that's because the company had a terrible earnings report. Revenue was down sharply, earnings were down, and they're not profitable anyway. But earnings were they missed on earnings by over 400%. They missed on revenue by over 80%. So it was a bad report for a stock that was probably overvalued going into the report. So it was natural that you're going to see some sell-off. They don't report again, I don't think, until, again, probably the middle of November. So there's a little lag time there coming in. But certainly there is a long-term story for the stock. It just depends on how much you want to pay for the stock today and how much you're expecting it to go down. Is this as low as it's going to get? I don't have any problem with saying if you believe in the long-term story, I don't think there's any problem with accumulating here.
Yeah, good advice on this one. Let's get into some more names. I'm going to kind of give a list of maybe 4 different names we're going to cover to give you time to pull up the charts here. Let's cover Archer Aviation. We're going to cover Fiserv as one of them. We'll do AMPX. I feel like this is a weekly occurrence. Let's talk about AMPX every single week. And then another one that we've had a couple of people ask about is Wix. WIX. So I've got those 4 on deck. We'll get a few more in here yet too. Don't worry, it's not the end quite yet. But let's pull up AMPX. I've got that chart, and I know that's when we talk about all the time, so that's an easy one to move to next.
Right.
Thomas, this one is at still hovering around that 767.
Right. Let me just touch base with the news flow and see if anything new has come up in the last couple of days. No, it's still just the last was the earnings call. Right. So looking at the chart, to me, this looks like a pretty bullish chart. The market has consolidated over the last several weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 8, 9, almost 10 weeks. But what it's kind of formed is this narrowing pattern with a rising bottom and a declining top, forming a little pennant pattern. Today's action looks like it's confirming that pennant as a bullish continuation of the rally that came before. This is all being driven by its product cycle. It's been ramping production. It's been taking orders. Demand is outpacing its production capacity. Capacity is ramping to meet demand. We're entering a hyper growth phase. which is really yet been unplumbed. So we're not really sure how much growth it's going to have, but we know it's going to be triple digits for the next few quarters, probably at least. So, based on what I'm seeing, it looks like we're having the start of what could be a pretty solid continuation signal. Could lead this market up. Let's see, 250 to 650. So that's like $4. Another $4. Take up to the 1050, maybe to 1250 region. And I think that's aligning with what the analysts are saying too. So certainly a bullish chart, a bullish fundamental story, bullish sell side activity leading the market higher. The targets between the analysts and the technicals kind of align with each other, makes it a higher probability move. Convergences in the chart, we talked about convergences before, just show some underlying market strength. Stochastic has plenty of room to move higher. So lots of good things in this chart, plenty of reason to think the market's going to move higher. Really no reason to think that it's going to be moving lower anytime soon.
It's a good update on a company that a lot of us are following right now. I think, where it's at right now, it's still towards the upper range, end of that 52-week range. So it's not like the lowest entry point for the stock, but like you said, plenty of times on this show that there's a lot of potential for this company. So it's a good one to talk about. Another one we talk about often, but is one to follow, one of those growth stocks, Chris, Archer Aviation. What has that stock been doing?
Well, so I think Archer, the story here is pretty similar to what we were just talking about with the STS. The stock's been down pretty sharply over the last month, and one of the reasons for that is because the earnings report was sort of a reality check for investors. It's a pre-revenue company, so there was really no revenue. There was no revenue to talk about, but it missed on earnings, which is to say that it came in with a larger loss than investors were expecting. And I think that's what's got a lot of investors spooked right now. This is a fascinating industry, and it's one of those that I think for a lot of people in your mind's eye, you can visualize this sector taking off, and this idea of a flying taxi, flying car, having a lot of applications in areas like, from airports into cities and, in terms of what first responders may need to remote areas. The problem I think you're seeing right now is investors are asking tough questions like, when is Archer going to become profitable, which is not going to be for a long time? And then once they are profitable, what's that margin going to start to look like? There's just a lot of uncertainty here. And I think that's where people are looking at it and saying, even if you're buying the stock now at $8, what is the potential upside for the stock? And I think there's just a reality that the FAA certification is taking, I think, a little longer than people expected. I still think it's going to get across the finish line, but it's taking a little longer than expected. Right. I think people are starting to realize that the company's going to have to start building these midnight aircrafts at a very large scale that it's not prepared to do right now. Right. When is that going to happen? Again, when do they become profitable, and what's their margin going to look like there? And I think that's just souring a lot of people on the space right now.
Right. I think what Chris is saying is right, because what I was just seeing and checking into, it seems like the timeline to really commercialize operations. I mean, they'll be commercially viable before this, but for really ramped up production and commercial scale production is going to be like 2028. So what I just saw was they're targeting for around the Olympics in 2028, which will be in Los Angeles and would be a perfect venue for them to launch their services.
Right.
The question is, will they be the late comer and Joby's already going to be there? Because I think Joby is a little bit on a quicker track, of a better track towards commercial operations.
Yeah, Thomas, I just pulled up the Joby chart just because I think you can't talk about Archer without talking about Joby. I know there's other competitors out there, but these are the two leaders. Their chart they're also seeing a pullback right now. And I think it's a little bit of what you guys just said, that it is longer, like the immediate profit is longer than what we're expecting. So it could be 2 years out. I think my natural question, though, even if the line to profitability is longer than what maybe investors are hoping for, it still feels like a good growth potential. The idea is there. We haven't seen it come to fruition yet. So are these pullbacks good entry points, or is this still something that's a wait and see? It's still a big risk right now.
I mean, it's an emergent tech, so of course it's going to have some risk to it. But this is one that everybody pretty much agrees is going to be useful and have applications, and we're just waiting for them to come to market.
Right.
Looking at the chart for Joby, it looks like right now would be a pretty decent time to get in. The market has pulled back to a critical previous resistance point and now seems to be bouncing off that level. Let me pull Archer back up. Archer chart is kind of mimicking Joby, but instead of being above that critical resistance point and confirming support at it, it is more looking like it's confirming resistance at that point. So it looks like the market's kind of telling us that it likes Joby better than Archer. But again, we're going to want to, kind of wait and see over the next, quarter or two for updates and how the road to commercialization unfolds. But, I kind of lean towards Joby myself, and it looks like the market's choosing Joby over Archer at the time.
Yeah, we've been seeing that the last couple of months for sure, that's what the
Right.
market is leaning towards right now. Interesting analysis, always a good topic to bring up, and it's going to continue to be a story. I don't see these two stocks going
is.
away anytime soon for the next couple of years, really. It's going to be a conversation. I do want to move us on to the next two stocks. So we're talking about Wix, WIX, and then we're going to talk about Fiserv as well. So, Chris, I'm hoping maybe you've had time to look up Wix a little bit.
I was actually looking up Archer, but I'll look up Wix right now and see what we've got.
Thomas, have you looked up Fiserv at all?
I didn't because we were talking about Archer and Joby.
Yes, no worries. But thanks again for bearing with us in the chat, guys. We're taking all of these live, so give us some time to pull up the chart. It'll be good to go. I do have Wix chart pulled up right away, so I'll just go to that one first. This one is seeing a little bit of a comeback after a pretty big pullback in August. What is this company?
Sorry, Bridget, I'm doing this. So Wix provides a web development platform for businesses and other organizations. So it allows them to manage their online presence without having to code. Is essentially what they do. So it's kind of a prepackaged. Here you go. Stock's been up about 13% in the last month. Trying to get a handle on any news here as far as what's driving that in the stock.
Again, we're working on the fly here, trying to figure this one out. Thanks to the viewers who brought this to our attention. I've not heard of this one. It's always fun to cover different ones. It looks like Cezad brought this one up, and maybe another one too. It's fun to see the different companies that we get from doing this every week. Sometimes we get names we haven't heard before. Sometimes we hear a lot of the same names, but it's always educational and get some more stocks to add to your watch list.
So yeah, I mean, I'm looking. It looks like they did their earnings early in August, and they had a beat on the top and bottom lines. So that's probably part of the reason why the stock's going up. It looks like analysts are pretty bullish on it right now. It's got a consensus buy and a price target of over $200. That's about 30% upside from where the stock is right now. So yeah, trying to get a better handle on the chart for you. It looks like it's at a fairly important level right now, around 153, to see if it can. Looks like there might be a little bit of resistance at that level from where it was in about the end of July. If it can push past there, then yes, you start to see those $200 price targets go in line. So now is probably a good time if you're thinking about getting in on Wix.
That's a good quick analysis on a cold look at a stock, Chris. Thank you so much for doing that one. Thomas, anything to add on that one, or do you want to move on to Fiserv?
Yeah, it looks like it's trending within a range. It's probably bottoming near the midpoint. Yeah, there's some upside there, I think, but I don't know if it's going to be too explosive.
Right.
Good. Well, let's move on to Fiserv, Thomas. What have you found about this company, or and I think this is one you might have covered before.
Right. This is financial services. I probably have, but it's been a while. I don't really remember it. Um, but I think the big problem right now for them is not that anything's wrong per se, but it's just not growing as fast as people were expecting. And it has had a persistent trend for the last 5 or 6 quarters of underperforming on the top line. The offsetting factor is that it's been outperforming on the bottom line, producing cash flow. Looks like it's buying back shares semi-aggressively, which should be supportive for the stock price over time. Valuation is pretty low. It's come down to about 10x, I think, this year, which 13x, that's mildly high for a financial company, but I mean, it's got really good cash flow and buying back shares. I think maybe wait for it to show a better bottom, but it would definitely be a stock to have on the watch list.
I think the interesting thing just that stands out to me on this one is the very bottom of that 52-week range. You don't always see it that close to a bottom. Is this the bottom, or could it go even further?
It looks like it could go a little bit further, but what I'm seeing in the charts are divergences. So instead of the MACD setting a new low with the recent price lows, the MACD set like a higher low. So it didn't advance as far as the new low in the price action, and that's showing a kind of a weakening within the market. So what that sets it up for is a rebound. There could still be some downside, but it looks like the bottom might be around 130, but possibly in the 125 to 120 region. So maybe look for upcoming results to be, in line with trends, but maybe not as bad as people feared, or with some hints of positivity that would help the market to bottom.
All right, very good. We'll cover just a couple more names here and then get into what you're looking ahead for this week.
Sure.
I do want to talk about one of the things in the comments. I think Mohammed wants to hear about MicroStrategy specifically, and I did a really interesting interview that's coming out on Wednesday. I totally can encourage you to watch on Wednesday to get an update on that one. So I'm going to skip it for now for our Monday live stream, but come back on Wednesday around market close, and I'll have a full interview that covers that one really well too. So watch for Wednesday's video if you're interested in MicroStrategy. And many other names too. We covered a lot of topics in that interview. But for today, Thomas and Chris, let's move on to a couple other names. Vladimir wants to hear about Indi, INDI. Let's cover that one. Another one is a name that we brought up on this channel a few different times, and we haven't done an update in a while. So let's talk about Dragonfly, DPRO. This is the drone company we talked about a while back. Let's get those two for now, and we'll see if we have time for a couple others yet too.
Sure.
I know I can talk about the drones for a second. I've got a drone company in our little in-house stock competition, and the drones, at least my drone stock, hasn't been doing much of anything recently. They had a really good season a couple of months ago when we had a different military contract signed, some different executive orders that really kind of boosted the expectations for the drone market, and now those stocks have seen kind of a leveling out. I'm curious if we see any more catalysts happening or anything in that sector as a whole.
Well, drones are just being driven by increased government spending, but also shifting to next gen technologies, which keeps soldiers off the battlefield and uses AI for target acquisition and other applications. But drones are real central to that because they're unmanned vehicles. They have a lot of technology in them as far as radar capabilities, targeting capabilities, intelligence gathering capabilities. So drones, I think, will be a pretty big business for defense, or in the defense sector, for quite some time looking forward.
Yeah, Bridget, this is to me, this is a story that we've already talked about a couple of times too, and it's just a reminder to investors that the earnings really matter, because again, this is a company that reported in the middle of August, and they missed on the top line and they missed on the bottom line, and they're not profitable yet. So again, when you get a report like that, it's just a reminder to an investor that it doesn't mean that your thesis is necessarily wrong on the stock and what the long-term outlook is, but there's been a lot of enthusiasm with some of these drone companies, and if the earnings report doesn't back up that enthusiasm, you're going to see this volatility, and that's all that there is. I mean, again, it doesn't change. It doesn't mean that the thesis of the stock is bad. It just means that it's gonna get whacked a little bit when you don't have pristine numbers in an earnings report, and this company didn't. So that, to me, that kind of explains why the stock's going down a little bit. And but it looks like it's been moving higher here in the last few days. So maybe that was a dip to buy.
Yeah, that's a good look at the drone sector right now. I think that's a good comment, Chris, about it doesn't mean that the fundamental idea isn't there. It's just seeing some volatility, and I think that's the case for a lot of stocks right now. Let's move on to Indie Semiconductor. I think this is a new stock. I don't think we've talked about this one on the channel yet.
No, I don't think we have.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It looks interesting because they're working on semiconductors and software for robotics, specifically for like self-driving cars. I think the big problem with them is that they're not making a ton of revenue. They're not growing very quickly. They're not profiting, and they've got a high short interest, which tells me that there are some other fundamental flaws that have attracted these really smart sellers. So with these factors in play, I wouldn't expect too much out of this one. There could be some good news coming out at any time to spark a short covering. But without some more research, it would be hard to say what that might be or when it might come. The next earnings report is mid-November, 54 million, and they're not really expecting very much. Flat year over year. So it's been in contraction the past couple of quarters. So flat is not bad, but given the state of semiconductor sales and outlook for AI and whatnot, this kind of a dud right now.
Yeah, not a lot going on in the chart, and I'm looking at, from the April dip specifically, it's gotten back up to where it dipped down to, but it's very much stuck in that same range. Not much going on with this one. So interesting company, though. It's always good to see a new name in the semiconductor field. So thanks for bringing this one up. It's a good one to keep an eye on, and I'll be interested to see if it has any moves or comes up again in a MarketBeat Monday chat. All right, I've got two more names before we get to closing out for the week, and they're names that we talked about before, but it would be good for an interesting update. Applied Digital, we got a specific question from Ravi. It's what's the range to take a new position, and is Applied Digital a good long-term play? This is the one that's been really good for some investors this year. We talked about it early on this channel, and once we talked about it, it really spiked up quite a bit. I'm excited to see where it's at right now, Chris and Thomas. Do we think that have you had time to pull up the chart quick?
Yeah, I got the chart here. It looks like where it is after today's close is potentially a good entry point. We pulled back from the most recent high, and we're showing support near the last high. If we don't get some upward movement in the next day or so, this market could continue to pull back to the next target for entry, which to me would be near about $11 or so. But I think long term it's a pretty decent play because they're going to be providing the highest power AI GPU compute as a service, which is going to be in high demand. We know that already.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, my chart wasn't pulling up for Applied Digital. I didn't have that on the screen for us, but it's definitely a good long-term play, and I think one that's going to continue to see a lot of demand. So that's why investors are still interested in it. It's still up quite a bit from where we first talked about it on this channel. So if you're been in Applied Digital, let us know how that stock's been doing for you. It's interesting, and a good time to get in potentially too. The last one I want to talk about today, I'll give you guys some time to look at it, is looking at one NBIS. It reports earnings tomorrow before the market open. This is from Alberto. NBIS, I feel like we've covered that one before too.
Yeah, it's Nebius, right?
Yeah.
Nebius, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the spun off from Russian Yandex, and now it's the European version of the data center AI GPUs as a service. This is correct?
Yes,
I think
that's correct.
Right. All right. Chart looks pretty strong. It's in rebound mode. Recent highs were hit in early August, pulling back. Looks like there might be support at the 30-day moving average. If not, we could pull back all the way to 60, possibly down to 50. But right now, it looks like we're in a pretty strong reversal. I would expect to see support well above the $50 level. When you get a confirmation of the market, buying and throwing another pretty strong, green buying candle, that would be a signal to get in, I think.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, guys, I think this is a good time to call it because my charts are not pulling up right now. So sorry for these last couple of stocks. I couldn't get charts for you. But thank you all for the great stock suggestions today. I'm going to wrap up today's Market Beat Monday by just talking about things to look forward to this week that could be big market movers and what we're really expecting in the market this week. I know we started out by talking about there's a lot of reports coming this week. I'm curious to see what you think the market could do based on how these reports come out.
Well, the CPI report could be like the labor data where it, on the one hand, it affirms the outlook for FOMC rate cuts, but on the other hand, also kind of raises fears of recession and economic weakness. So I think in the end, unless it's really different than consensus either direction, it's going to be one of those bricks on the wall of worry right now. As we said earlier, as I said, I think the fundamental outlook is still bullish and tilted towards higher share prices. CPI might cause a sell-off, but I think it would be a buying opportunity within that.
Right. And I think there's a lot of attention being placed to the CPI. I'm probably a little bit more interested to see what the PPI is going to be, because if you remember last month, it was the PPI. The CPI kind of came in and it was benign and the market was happy. And then the PPI came in a little elevated and the market got scared. And if the PPI comes in hot again, that could signal that CPI number on Thursday is going to be higher than a lot of people expect. So I'm kind of looking at that in terms of, what to expect from a market moving standpoint this week.
A thought I had earlier when you were talking about them being flip-flop this time was the PPI is the leading indicator of the two. Right. If it comes in hot, it might not matter what the CPI says. The CPI could be awesome, but if the PPI says that next month it could be hotter, it might offset it. I mean,
but that actually just raised an interesting point, Bridget, as far as another thing to watch for this week is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that this week we're going to get the consolidation of the labor numbers. So apparently every year there's a consolidation where the government takes a look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics number and the household survey, and they try to marry the two together to say what's the actual number. And I was hearing some reports today that number is going to be a lot lower in terms of job creation than people thought. That obviously could be wrong, but that's the initial report that's coming out, is that number may be a shockingly low number, which would then almost cement that 25 basis point cut and perhaps lead to this idea that there could be an even larger cut coming.
Right. One of the things that I started seeing in some of the chatter today was the possibility, what if they cut by 50 basis points this time? Right. I don't necessarily see that happening, but it would be a way for them to reassure the market, free up capital within the system, and then tell everybody to just sit back and chill out till next year sometime. Exactly. And wait for tariffs to be solidified, wait for policies to work their way through the system, because tariffs are huge right now. They may be enacted, they may not be enacted.
I agree.
So like if they get repealed, then all of a sudden the U.S. debt's going to get all crazy because we're going to have to borrow money to pay these things back. But then the boost to earnings will be ridiculous, right? And then the ease or the easing of conditions for the consumer will be ridiculously good. And so.
And we won't know any of that until probably mid-October at best.
Right.
Yeah. So you're right, Thomas. That's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another layer to all of this.
And next week is the FOMC, but it's also triple witching options expiration.
True.
So with all these things happening and uncertainty and things not being in the air, there could be volatility, or it could be nothing. I mean, it could be people might just roll them over till the next expiration. But there's a lot that could happen. I mean, it's one of those things where you start pulling the thread on the sweater. Next thing you know, we're down 25 or 30%.
Right.
There's a lot of market moving numbers is what I heard from that conversation. The other thing I picked up the other thing I picked out of that is the market will just sit back and chill for a year because it's definitely known for just chilling and not reacting to any of this news, right? I think we're going to see some reactions coming this week, or nothing could happen. I think that's a good what if. Thank you guys both for giving a good little analysis of what to expect this week. There's a lot happening. I so appreciate everybody who joined us today to give some stocks to talk about and to also dive into the what ifs of what could come yet this week. We know there's a lot of numbers, so be ready. We're going to be here on MarketBeat to help track all of the moves that do come, whatever those numbers might be. Thanks again for joining us, everyone, for another MarketBeat Monday. We'll see you again here next week, same time. Have a great day, everyone, and as always, happy investing.